Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is John Campia, and this is our open Aquaman spoiler review and discussion. In case it isn't made perfectly clear by the title of this video, this is an all spoiler discussion stuff, guys. So if you have not seen Aquaman yet, you got to make sure that you get over and see that before you hit play on this video. And again, I forgot to plug in my monitor. Hold a second, guys. I've been forgetting that like the last few days. I got a new side monitor, and I keep, long story short, I have to unplug it, but then I keep forgetting to plug it back in. Anyway, hey, so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about Aquaman and all that kind of stuff. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to start off by giving some of my more spoilery thoughts on Aquaman. I'm just going to take a few minutes to do that. And then what we'll do for the rest of the hour is just take your guys' thoughts, observations, and questions about Aquaman as we go on. Again, I can't emphasize this enough, guys, spoiler stuff here, so if you haven't seen the movie, maybe come back and watch later. All right, my thoughts on Aquaman in spoilerish details. Well, if you guys have been watching me, you know I like this movie. I think this is a winner for Warner Brothers. This is a winner film for Warner Brothers. Had a good opening weekend. I think it made 67. The official opening weekend number is 67 million, which is right where they were projecting it. Good, solid numbers. And it's a fun film. It's a fun film. James Wan nailed all the things that we knew James Wan would nail. James Wan knows how to bring action and adventure. He knows how to bring that stuff to the screen. He does it very well. He's also really good with comedic timing in his stuff. We've seen that in his previous films, even his horror stuff. He knows when to drop humor and how to effectively use it. And he does a great job with that here. Now, what I've also said before is that James Wan, while he has a great many strengths as a director, that makes him a very, very fun guy to watch, he also has a couple of weaknesses as a director. Specifically when it comes to carrying emotional weight, he hasn't quite fine-tuned dealing with moments of emotion in movies very well. And there are a number of films we could go back over and point out examples of that, but I think that plays itself out here. I'll give you a great example to me. I think a couple of the scenes that didn't quite work, is like, for instance, when Aquaman's mother, Nicole Kidman, is standing on the edge of the dock, and she says, they're never going to stop coming for me. I've got to go. And it's supposed to be this emotional goodbye, not only to the man she loves, but her baby. And I got the story part of it. She's going, she hates to go, but she has to go. I got that, and that's important, but it didn't carry any emotional weight. There was just no emotional weight. Now, if you want to juxtapose that against, say, another comic book film. Let's say Civil War. I just watched Civil War again the other day. So Captain America Civil War, right? Emotional weight, like when Tony and Steve are talking to each other and Steve goes that line, he's my friend. So was I. I mean, the way they were able to bring emotion into that, or some, and Man of Steel had a number of really good emotional parts that just seem amongst all the really good things James Wan does. That continues to be a little bit of a weak area. And again played out, really obviously to me, in the third act, after Aquaman beats Orem. And all of a sudden, Nicole Kidman comes walking out of the water. Oh, and by the way, this is the thing that is hilarious for me. She comes out of the water, right? Aquaman and Mera went straight to the battle, right? They got out of they left the lost ocean, went straight to the battle because the battle had already begun. Atlanteans are dying. So he rushes off to that battle, right? What does the Queen do? What does Nicole Kidman do? Yeah, guys, you go. I'll catch up. I haven't showered in like 20 years. I'm going to go they live in the water. I guess she doesn't need a shower. But still, I'm going to take a shower. And more importantly, I'm going to get a change of clothes. Ma, We're going off to a battle. Our people are dying. We need to get over there. Oh, I know. But, I've been wearing the same thing for 20 years. Before I make my appearance, I got to go and change clothes. And Nicole Kidman's character apparently thought she had all the time in the world to go off, get a change of wardrobe, put on a nice dress, and then show up when the fighting's done. And that I was like, what? How did that make any sense? Anyway, getting to the emotional part of it, her coming out, no, there's been enough killing. I'm like, really? That's the line? And there was just no emotional weight. I felt no emotional weight between Orem seeing his mom and the mom seeing Orem, and the way that whole thing played out, it just felt very forced. It just felt very forced. And then again, one of the really nice emotional things is that thing where Aquaman's dad every morning goes to the end of the pier. That's a lovely sentiment. I like that a lot. I dug that part. But then their reunion at the end was, I don't know. I didn't get any satisfaction from it. I didn't like the way they played it out. And again, that's just, and then carrying on the emotional weight stuff, while there is chemistry between Jason Momoa and Amber Heard in the movie, I never bought into their falling in love scenes. I just never bought into this. Again, these are all just little pockets of things that I feel like highlight the strengths of James Wan when you look at the rest of the movie, and those little areas of weaknesses that James has that I don't think he's quite mastered yet. The scenes that are supposed to have emotional weight, whether it's between a mother and a son, between a husband and a wife, or between a love interest, Aquaman, and his fellow love interest, Mera in this case. And that's where it kind of became a little uneven. Overall, hell of a lot of fun. Jason Momoa is a great Aquaman. There were some moments I could have done without. I mean, like the octopus playing the drums, I could have done without that. The whole ESPN scoreboard, advantages, disadvantages, I could have done without that. Felt a little Phantom Menace to me, if you know what I'm talking about. But still, solid movie. I think it is my third favorite DCEU film. Obviously, I still have Man of Steel as number one. And I would just give a slight edge to Wonder Woman. I guess Man of Steel by a mile. And then I think there's Wonder Woman just slightly ahead of Aquaman. So I liked Aquaman. And you guys know I like Justice League in that, but I liked Aquaman more than Justice League. I like Aquaman more than Batman vs. Superman. Certainly liked it more than Suicide Squad. But yeah, overall, a good, solid, fun film. I had a good time with it. I've seen it a couple times already. I plan on seeing it more. So those are my couple of little thoughts and notions in my head. The issue here, though, today is what are you guys thinking about Aquaman and things you want to talk about? Again, totally open for any spoiler topic you want. So let's get into that right now. And we're going to start off here today with Samuel Pole, who writes, "There's no other way to cut it. This movie is stupid. Characters are interrupted by explosions 6 times. Yes, I counted. But somehow it worked for me." You are right. I noticed that the first time I watched it. It's like, how many times? Like, well, blah, 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 boom. They went back to that well a couple of, but I will say this. Samuel. Each time it worked for me. Each time they did that, it actually kind of worked for me. And it did shock me into the scene a little bit. The one time it didn't was when King Orem is meeting with Mera's father, played by Dolph Lundgren. This was the great thing. I had totally forgotten Dolph Lundgren was in the movie till the first time I saw it. I was like, whoa, yeah, that's right, that's Dolph Lundgren. Anyway, that's the one explosion interrupting while people are talking part that did not work for me. It didn't bring me into the scene. It was like, okay, well, that's kind of dumb. Aside from that, I thought they all kind of worked. Are there dumb things about it? Absolutely. Is this a movie that embraces the comic book movie nature of it? Absolutely it does. But where it works, where others sometimes don't work, is the fact that it's not only aware of that, it embraces it and actually goes for it on that level, which is why it worked for me. Because, so to me, even the silly stuff, like, here's a great example of the silly stuff, right? The dumb stuff. The biker dudes in the bar who go up to Aquaman, "You that water boy," water man, or whatever it is. And then they want to take a selfie. That is stupid and silly. But you know what? It worked. And the 2 times I've seen this movie in theater, the audiences laughed pretty good at that. Especially when it goes from him looking grumpy in the selfies, and then all of a sudden he's having a good time because he's drinking with them. I mean, is it dumb? Yes. Was it silly? Absolutely. But sometimes you can do dumb and silly correctly and achieve the desired result. Other times people go for the same type of silly and stupid, but it doesn't achieve the result. This is one where I felt like more times than not it did. So anyway, yeah, that's my thought. Samuel Pole writes, only thing I hated was Manta. You know, Manta is a very divisive thing amongst a lot of people because there are people who love Manta in this. Like, just love Manta in this. And there are some people that it didn't quite work for them. I thought, I never pronounced the guy's name properly. His first name's Yaya. But what I thought Yaya really brought to it was that pure rage. They got me to buy into that right away. This dude loves his dad. He watches his dad die. And it really is all Aquaman's doing. And it really is. So they give that motivation there. And then what I bought into was that pure rage aspect of it that he carried through. The fact that he was able to deconstruct the Atlantean weapon and create a whole brand new weapon in like 3 hours, that was a little bit dumb. That he was able to take this gun and turn it into a helmet within like 3 hours with technology he's never seen or touched before. That was a little bit silly, but whatever, we let that go. We suspend disbelief for that. So, but it's interesting you mentioned that, Samuel, because I say, I know a lot of people who loved Manta in this and some people who really didn't like him. He's going to be one of those characters. Mike Hill writes, I got nothing. I got thinking about it. Something, if the Atlanteans were to invade the land, how do they plan on getting past Superman? Do they know he is out there? I think, look, Aquaman can fight Superman. He'll lose, but he can fight Superman. An army of Atlanteans could pose a real problem to Superman. An army of Atlanteans could pose a problem to Superman. But again, this is why this is a problem that always comes up with shared cinematic movies. Well, what about that here? Why didn't Wonder Woman come? Where was Batman? How come the Flash didn't show up? Well, how could they invade? How come they never even addressed Superman when Superman... I mean, that is one of the problems and why I long for standalone, isolated superhero movies again. But whatever, I digress. I would have a feeling that Orem and Mera and Aquaman and Mera's father and I think you start stacking up the table enough, you can give Superman a run for his money. And that's probably something they thought about. But look, Aquaman was clearly a movie that did not want to reference the rest of the DCEU. There was only one reference to anything in the DCEU. And that was that quick, if you blink you'll miss it, one-line reference that Mera makes when she shows up in the town, talks to Aquaman for the first time, saying, you defeated Steppenwolf, now we need you again. Of course, the whole Steppenwolf thing was from Justice League. That is the only reference to the DCEU at all in the entire movie. So I don't think they wanted to bring up Superman, and I don't think they wanted to bring up Batman, and they didn't want to bring up Flash, and they wanted to stay away from that. But I just assumed as a viewer that they probably had some plans for that and to how to try to deal with that. That was just my thinking. All right. I'm Upset writes, where are we here? The Pitbull song was awful, worse than the Men in Black 3 song. I don't know that it was worse than the Men in Black 3 song. I didn't mind it the first time I watched the movie. Of course, it's the Rains in Africa song by Pitbull. The second time I watched the movie, I'll admit it grated on me a little bit more. Why does every movie feel like they have to have a Pitbull tune? And by the way, I like Pitbull. I like Pitbull's music. But, you know, why do they have to drop so many Pitbull tunes in so many movies? And then I watched a trailer for that new animated film, The Uglies or Ugly Town or whatever it's called. Ugly Dolls. That's what it is. Ugly Dolls. And of course, they got to drop in a Pitbull tune in that too. I'll agree. It didn't pull me out of the movie. It didn't ruin the movie for me, but I'll agree that, yeah, the song didn't work. Casey Thurman writes, Aquaman opened to $72.2 million. That's with the Amazon screening. Again, that does not count. That Amazon screening does not count as its opening weekend. Opening week, just like Wednesday's totals for Mary Poppins don't count towards its opening weekend. That one screening of Aquaman a week earlier, that doesn't count. The opening weekend number was $67 million, but whatever. Aquaman opened really to $67 million. This puts it at $482.2 million overall. Do you think it has a shot at $1 billion? No, I still don't think it has a shot at $1 billion. I really don't. So let me pull up some numbers here. You got to remember this whole, it's already in its opening weekend made 480. Remember, it's been open in a lot of countries around the world for a little while now. It's been open in a lot of countries around the world for a while now. So you're going to see those international numbers start to drop because it's already been out for a few weeks in some places. And then it opened to $67.4 million on this weekend with the Amazon screenings on top. It's now made $72 million domestically. Make $1 billion? I think only one film. There might have been a couple. The only movie, I'll say this, the only movie that comes to mind that joined the $1 billion club that did not make at least like 90 million opening weekend, the only one I can really think of is Avatar. I'm sure there are others. There must be others. But that's the only one that really pops to mind right now. No, I don't see Aquaman making $1 billion. I mean, I think it's a good film. I hope it does. I mean, wouldn't that be great if the DCEU finally had its first film to join the $1 billion club? And this is a nice little movie to do it. I don't think it's going to happen, but I will be cheering for it. I hope it does. Let's see here. Mason Kackman writes, really like the movie. Nicole Kidman's opening fight scene and the last act was amazing. The opening fight scene was great. I love it. It's not easy to do close quarters action sequences. And that whole action sequence with her fighting off the Atlantean military that came for her was in this close quarters in this house. And I thought it looked fantastic. I thought that fight scene looked great. And it did a really good job kind of setting the tone, I thought, for what the type of action you can expect in this movie. I thought it did a great job at that. The last scene, I mean, it is certainly this big bonkers battle sequence. I'll be honest with you. While it was certainly fun, some of the CGI was pretty questionable in it. Like, for instance, there are some people going, why isn't, like, for those of you who don't know, the short list of the 10 films that are in the running for best visual effects, Aquaman wasn't one of them. Aquaman didn't make the cut. And there are a lot of people going out there, Aquaman got snubbed. No, it didn't. There's a lot of CGI in Aquaman. I honestly have no problem of Aquaman not making the final 10. Now, let's just put it this way, too. I would have had no issue if Aquaman was in the final 10, but there's no way in hell Aquaman deserves to be nominated for Best Visual Effects. No. The art direction's fantastic, but art direction isn't visual effects. Those are two different things. The art direction was great. I just found a lot of the visual effects to be a little bit questionable, which is fine. It never really took me out of the movie. Sometimes some of the shark stuff did and whatever, but that's fine. But for the most part, the visual effects never took me out of the movie, but I was never not aware that I was looking at visual effects. You know, sometimes you look at Thanos and you're like, oh, that's right. This is a CGI character. And you totally forget that. You just totally forget you're looking at something that isn't real. I was never unaware of that in Aquaman. I am perfectly fine. As much as I'm a fan of this movie, I am perfectly fine that it did not get shortlisted for Best Visual Effects. Let's see here. But yes, that opening fight sequence, was nutty. And the overall action choreography of the final scene was really impressive too. Again, it was just bonkers. James Wan just went nuts with it. He just went completely bonkers, and I think that was great. Let's see. Jeff Crow writes, what was worse, Ant playing drums in Ant-Man and the Wasp or Octopus playing drums in Aquaman? I will go the Ant playing the drums in Ant-Man and the Wasp. I think that one was worse. They're both bad. They both pulled me out of the movie momentarily. Neither crippled the movie or was anything that bad. I mean, the octopus playing the drum sequence was really short too. It was like 2 seconds. 2 seconds and it's gone. So no big deal. But it did. It was like, okay, that pulled me out of the movie completely. Like, if you're trying to get me immersed into this Atlantean culture and into this world as an audience member, well, congratulations, you just completely yanked me out of that. And then they followed up the octopus playing the drums with the big ESPN kind of scoreboard, pros and cons thing. It's like, oh, God, what were you thinking? But I think the Ant playing the drums is even worse. I think the ant playing the drums was even worse. So I'll go with the Ant-Man one was worse. James Welsh writes, what do you think of the Julie Andrews character? Oh, I thought the character was very interesting. I thought the character was very interesting. They didn't let you know much about it. They just kind of referenced this creature that defends this thing a little bit in a mythology kind of tone, which I thought was appropriate. And I liked it. I don't think it needed to be Julie Andrews doing the voice, but it's cool knowing it was Julie Andrews doing the voice. That was neat to know. Kind of funny that she's doing the voice while a new Mary Poppins movie is coming out at the same time. I thought that was funny. But yeah, I like the character. James Walsh also follows up. Jaimon Hansu was wasted in his 2-minute scene. No, he wasn't. Look, you don't give a character more scene just because of the actor you have doing it. Right? They only needed the King of the Fishermen tribe or clan, whatever they call them. They only needed that character for a minute. And hey, we've got Jaimon Hansu in the now Jaimon Hansu, he is in 3 comic book franchises, right? So he's in the MCU. He's going to be in the Shazam franchise because he is the Wizard Shazam, and he's in the Aquaman mythology now because he's the voice of the Fisherman King, which is kind of funny. But you don't expand that role just because you got somebody doing the voice. They just brought that. Hey, you know what? We're working with Jaimon right now. Wouldn't it be cool to have him do the voice of that character just quick? Sure, because Jaimon Hansu is awesome, and he's got a great voice. So I didn't think he was wasted. I didn't think he was wasted at all. I thought the whole scene was a bit of a waste, but I don't think he was wasted in it. Lyle Navin writes, big guy with pink phone case wanting a picture equals laugh out loud. Again, a dumb, stupid, silly scene that completely worked for me. Completely worked for me. Because I bought into it too when they walked over, you that fish boy. The only thing I was rolling my eyes at, oh, come on, if they know he's the Aquaman, they wouldn't go over and pick a fight with him. Come on. But sure enough, I thought that was the case. I thought they were about to pick a fight. And then they go, selfie? I thought, that's so ridiculous, but so funny. And then they started showing the pictures that they were taking as Aquaman, Arthur gets more and more into it because he's drinking more and more. Totally worked for me. Totally worked for me. Maybe it shouldn't have, but it totally did. I thought the timing of it was really good and very true to the character as well. Very true to the character. All right. ZMG Ruler writes, do you think Legion of Doom should have recruited Manta post-credits? No, that would have been dumb. I think that would have been really stupid. They need to abandon that whole Legion of Doom idea. They need to completely abandon that idea. And again, it became very clear in this movie they were not trying to reference. Look, they acknowledged they're in the DCEU with that line about Steppenwolf. But they also wanted to create some distance between them and the greater DCU, by not mentioning anybody else any other time. Drop in one line just to acknowledge this is in the DCEU. This is in continuity with what happened in Justice League. Just to acknowledge it, but then they distance themselves from that by never mentioning anything else about the DCEU ever again in the movie. And I think all of a sudden doing a Legion of Doom thing at the end, I think they realized that was a folly of an idea even to start with. And I do not think they're going in that direction. That's not where I see Walter Hamada taking this thing. So, I think it was a very wise decision not to have that at the end. That's just my opinion, though. That's just my opinion. All right, let's move on here. Let's see who we got next here. We got Eddie Herrera who writes, or is it Edie? I'll go with Eddie, but it might be Edie. Forced romance, falling in love because you accidentally touched hands briefly. Big pet peeve of mine. Well, I'll say this. I don't think they were falling in love because they accidentally touched hands. I think as much as I don't think they handled the developing emotions between Mera and Aquaman very well, the idea at least behind it was that they were already developing feelings. That was implied. And then their hands touch. It's not like we don't care about each other. We don't care about each other. Oh, our hands touched. Oh, now we're in love. That would be ridiculous. Yes. But the reason it worked for me here is because I felt like it was implied leading up to that point that they were already developing admiration, respect, and a little bit of affection. I thought it was implied in the film that they were already developing affection. And then when they touch hands, it's kind of when they acknowledge, the look they exchange is the acknowledgement to each other that we're developing affection here. And because of that, it was fine with me. But believe me, I know what you're talking about. We have seen other movies pull this stuff. It's like, well, I don't really care for you, and I don't really care for you, blah, blah, doing our thing. Oh, our hands touched, we're in love. Yeah, that is sickening. And it does ruin a scene, and it does take you out of it. But again, I personally don't feel like that's the case with Aquaman, because I believe they were implying it leading up to that point anyway, and that was just, the hand touch was just kind of a culmination of that. So I'm okay with it. In this circumstance, I'm okay with it because I don't think it was nothing, touch, love. I don't think that's what they were doing here. But I agree, there are other movies that do that sometimes, and I also agree that is a pet peeve of mine as well when they do that. All right. Mr. Spooky Spare writes, I love the references from The Little Mermaid. I'm trying to remember. I've seen The Little Mermaid like once in my life. So I'm trying to remember the Little Mermaid references. I can't remember the Little Mermaid references there. And now there's probably a bunch of you guys right now screaming at the computer. How can you not remember this line? I know it's probably happening, but I don't even remember the Little Mermaid references. But I'm sure a hell of a lot of you guys do. Mark Williams writes, the rooftop chase scene was that was great. I personally think the best action sequence of the movie was that rooftop sequence and the fight in the Italian town. The rooftop chase scene was so intense. The action was insanely well crafted by James Wan. Aquaman is my second favorite DCU movie behind Man of Steel. Again, well, for me, it's my third favorite, just behind Man of Steel and Wonder Woman, but just by a bit. But full agreement here, Mark. I thought the way, and not only was it good action, one of the things that I appreciated about that scene a lot from a cinematography point of view is there are a couple of points in that rooftop chase battle fight scene stuff that was going on where the camera would be like on Mara running across the roof with guys hot on her tail, and then the camera keeps her in the shot, but the camera then expands and pulls back and turns just a bit to you see Mara running over here, and you see Aquaman and Manta fighting here. So because what a lot of films would do in a situation like this is cut to the Mara part of the battle, and Mara's running from those guys and blah, blah, blah. Okay, now cut to Aquaman and Manta fighting, and then they cut to Aquaman and Manta, and then just keep going back and forth, and that's fine. But I really appreciated in Aquaman the way they navigated that by visually reminding us and showing us that this is all taking place at the same time, and the cameras pull back and you see both beats of action going on at the same time in different parts of the neighborhood. And I really, really dug that. It made me feel the scope of it a little bit. It made me feel the scope of it. And by the way, I loved how Mara's part of that thing when she gets in the thing with the wine, and she's just like, there are a couple of moments in this film, and I appreciate this too, because remember, I first really got into Aquaman reading Aquaman in the New 52 Aquaman, and they really give you a better idea. Mara, you don't fuck with Mara. Like, you do not screw with Mara. She's powerful. And they give you glimpses of that in the New 52 storyline. And I really dug when, these guys are chasing her, and she's like, oh, yeah, okay, I got a bunch of liquid here. And she just she's the master of water, right? And, they come in, she's like, by the way, boys, you're dead. Boom, and just slayed them all. I thought that was great. I like the way Aquaman's part of that scene. Bottom line here, it's a great overall scene, and I loved it, and I thought it worked really well. All right, let's see. That was Mark, right? A little bit of a jump here. Sorry about that, guys. Where is Mark? La 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 la. Okay, here we go. There was Mark. Now we move on to Taki75. And Taki75 says, loved Black Manta. Glad DC has big plans for him. See, and there it is. Because just a little bit earlier, somebody said, man, I just hated Black Manta. And now we have somebody say, man, I love Black Manta. The one thing that I did regret, and I remember when the news about this came out, a couple of months ago, one of the DC executives said, oh yeah, we love Black Manta. We got big plans for him in the future of the DC movies. It's like, well, okay, so you just let us know he doesn't die in this movie. Great, thanks. And so sure enough, as this great battle is going on that we're talking about, and he then chucks Black Manta off the cliff, there's not even a mystery to it. We already know he survives the fall and he's coming back. And that, knowing that in advance, kind of took the impact of the scene out. And what it certainly did was it killed any mystery and any fun out of the post-credit scene. It turned the post-credit scene into a pointless exercise for me. The post-credit scene of Black Manta floating on the raft, they pull him up, and then, I keep forgetting the actor's name, I just know him as Asian Jim. And they bring in Asian Jim from The Office, and he's the mad scientist doctor, which, by the way, that role shouldn't have even been in the movie. But I'll talk about that more later, I'm sure. But yeah, I dug Black Manta. I dug him. But again, I know not everybody does. But I, for one, thought he was a pretty good character and used pretty well, other than the end credit. I thought the end credit was totally stupid. I did not dig the end credit scene. Totally could have done without it. Let's see. RR101 writes, your thoughts on the end credit... Oh, that's funny that you bring that. Your thoughts on the end credit scene and the future of DC. Well, again, I thought it was kind of a pointless end credit scene. And it felt silly. Look, the whole tone of Aquaman has a bit of silly to it. But that end credit scene just felt really silly. I was not a fan of the end credit scene. Not a fan of it at all. I think the movie actually would have been better without it. Quite frankly. I think the movie would have been better without it. And if you had just left the audience wondering or not knowing what the fate of Black Manta was. Other than that, I thought, future DC, look, I think things look good right now. Walter Hamada has got them going in a different direction. I think Aquaman is a sign of things to come. I think Shazam is going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to Shazam. And, as long as Patty Jenkins is directing Wonder Woman, I'm going to have a lot of belief in that franchise because the most important thing is the director, and Patty Jenkins is a fantastic director. So I think things are looking good. For now. RR101 follows up with, not every critic was a fan of the movie score, but I personally loved it. No, I mean, look, not every critic loves any movie. There's no movie you're going to find where every critic loves it unless the movie starts with the words Toy Story. Then everybody will love it. But, yeah, not everybody was a big fan of it. And I mean, the movie, the score of the film, I think was fine. Wasn't super memorable to me, but nothing bad about it either. The soundtrack got a little bit questionable here and there, but the score was nice. The score worked for me. At least it did for me. So you and I are on the same page there, RR101. All right, Pool of Dead writes, in my opinion, Black Manta's acting was god-awful. I mean, I'm going to disagree. I'll just straight up disagree with you on that. I thought it was pretty good. I thought there was, in a movie like this, your characters are called to go a little bit overboard, for extra emphasis. In a movie like this, you don't go for a lot of subtlety. And they certainly didn't go for any subtlety in Black Manta. And I thought he played it perfectly well. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Yaya deserves an Academy Award or anything like that. No. Don't get me wrong. But I thought he played it quite well. Personally. I walked out of there perfectly happy with his performance as Black Manta and perfectly happy with the character himself. But again, like I said off the beginning, Pool of Dead, I can totally see how the character and maybe even the performance brought to the character is going to be a little bit divisive among some people. I get that. I get it, and I have no problem with that. All right. Let's see here. Cameron Peterson writes, I was very disappointed by this film. Action was incredible. Visuals were stunning, but dialogue and story were very rough. 6 out of 10. Good film, but not great. I'm not far off from you, Cameron. I'm not far off from you. I think it was a quite a good film. Not great. I'm not putting it on the level of like, say, a Civil War or Man of Steel, or I'm not going to put it up there. Like it's not, it doesn't deserve to be in the conversation, in my opinion. It doesn't deserve to be in the conversation of top 10 best comic book movies ever. It's a good movie. It was good. It was fun. But you know what? This is what Warner Brothers needed. They needed a win. And this movie's a win. This movie is a win. I also thought the story was fine. I did. I thought the story was perfectly good. Some of the dialogue was weak. They didn't handle the emotional weight scenes very well at all, which is, unfortunate. That's part of a truism of this movie, and I agree on that. But I thought the story was good. The half-breed son, now the half-brother who has a very shaky claim to the throne, wants to bring war to the surface, and he now is being called in to try to stop this world from going on, and then has to go through like a Hercules, the trials of Hercules, right? If for those of you who know your Greek mythology, he kind of has to go through the trials of Hercules a little bit to come to the end. So I thought the story was, I'll tell you what, I thought the story was quite good. I thought it was very good. I thought the story was very good, but I agree. A lot of the dialogue, it was a little soft. Let's say it's soft in some places, and they weren't able to really make those emotional moments pop, which could have given the film a lot more weight. That prevents the movie from being a great movie. But that's just my opinion, and that's just yours. So I'm with you there roughly. I just think it deserved a little bit more credit than you give it. But hey, that's why all film is subjective, and that's why we're all film fans together. Thanks for sharing your thoughts, Cameron. All right, ZCM Zombie Custom Maps writes, I felt they should have explained Aquaman's powers in this film. Plus, they kind of threw too many ideas, which blinded it from the overarching story. I don't know about that. I'm going to disagree with you on that, ZCM. I don't think you need to explain his powers. I think there's something to be said for movies not having to explain everything. Mera has unique powers even amongst Atlanteans. Arthur has powers unique amongst Atlanteans. His ability to, telepathically have communication with life in the ocean. I don't know that you have to explain that. I don't think you have to explain. It is something that is unique to him, that even the giant sea creature, and I can't remember the name of the sea creature that Julie Andrews voices at the end, but even the sea creature's like, whoa, wait a minute, what? You understand me? Like, I haven't seen anybody do that since King Atlantia. Or Atlan, or whatever they called him there. So no, I don't think they needed to explain it. I think that would have been pointless. Honestly, what does that do? Explaining his powers, what does that do for the story? Nothing. It just bogs us down and takes us into an explain-o-vision kind of mode that we don't need explained, and then we can move on from it. With too many ideas that blinded us from the overarching story, again, I don't know. I mean, look, you clearly had that experience. I didn't. And I'm even right now, I'm trying to think of the things that would have distracted me from the overarching story. I don't know that much did. You had a little bit of side drama with Mera and her father. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The trials of Arthur, like having to go through the trench, that is part of the overarching story to me. So I don't know. So clearly, ZCM, though, your experience was a little bit different than the experience I had. Nothing wrong with that, and that's great. But yeah, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit there because number one, I don't think they should have explained his powers. I don't think that's necessary to the story. Nor do I think there was too many side issues going on that distracted from the story. At least that's not how I felt, at any rate. I never felt that once when I was watching it, but that's just me. There are probably others who agree with you, though, man. All right. Hector Rios writes, love this movie so much, my favorite DC movie. And you know what? It's one of those movies where I could see the weaknesses and understand why there are people who do not like this film. I get it. But I also see the real strengths of the film that would make me understand when somebody makes it their favorite DCU movie. I get that too. It is a lot of fun. And there is good laughs in it. And there's good entertainment in the film. And again, I just think Jason Momoa is a great choice to play that role. I'm not going to say he was the perfect choice, but I think he was a great choice to play this role. I was excited about his casting from the first day I heard about it. From day one that I heard about his casting, I thought I was really, really happy that he did. So, anyway, so I really like that. So, yeah, anyway, there we go. Let's see. Movie Games writes, where's Movie Games? There he is. Movie Games writes, Black Manta was the best part of this movie, period. And again, some people thought he was the worst part of the movie. Some people thought he was the best part of the movie. That's just the kind of character that he is. I think that's just a reflective of the type of character that he is and the kind of division some people are going to have. But that's great. That's great. Different people have different opinions on him. Angry Irish Benjamin writes, this movie was awesome and I'm glad it's doing well. DC fans deserve movies as successful and beloved as the ones Marvel fans get too. They do deserve that. But again, I want to get rid of this whole notion of I'm a Marvel fan and I just want us all to be comic book movie fans. And ultimately, at the end of the day, not care what corporate label is slapped on the movie. That's where I would like us to be. But that's not where we're at right now. There are Marvel fans, there are DC fans. And yes, DC fans deserve a win. Wonder Woman was a win. Then they took one on the chin with Justice League, unfortunately. And I think Aquaman's a win. And it's doing well and successful. And for those people who kind of identify themselves as DC fans, this is something they can hold I believe this is something they can hold their head up over. Again, do I put it on the level of Man of Steel? No. Do I put it on the level of a Civil War or an Avengers or things like that? No. But I think it's a win. And man, those who identify themselves as DC fans, yeah, they've taken a beating over the last few years. There's no doubt about that. They've taken a beating with very divisive movies and blah, blah, blah. And, you don't want to get too far ahead of yourself. But I think the future with Walter Hamada looks bright. I'm not guaranteeing Shazam's going to be great. You can't do that. But I think there's more of a reason, I think, today for people who are DC fans to be optimistic than there was a few months ago. Let's put it that way. I think today there is more reason for DC fans to be optimistic than there was, maybe a year ago. So let's see how that all kind of continues to evolve. All right, Pool of Dead writes, action saved this movie. Orem was also great, but underused. Yeah, I think it was a little bit. I also think they made him a little bit one-dimensional. I think they made Orem a little bit too one-dimensional. The one scene with Orem, and then I'll finish reading your comment there, that kind of worked for me was I actually believed Orem was being sincere before his first fight with Arthur, saying, look, I don't want to kill you. I don't want to kill you. You are my brother after all. So I'm going to give you one more chance. Just leave. Just leave. Because he didn't need to give him that opportunity. Orm knew he would best Arthur in combat there because he's been in the water his whole life. And I thought that was the one kind of multi-dimensional moment that he had in the movie. So I don't know that he was underused, but I don't think he was properly used because he did come across a little bit one-dimensional. The Trident stuff could have been shorter because he just showed up and got it. 3 out of 5 for me. I don't think he just showed up and got it. I think there was a lot of trials he had to go through to get it. Between going to the desert kingdom and then finding the Italian coast city and, doing the bottle thing and then getting through the trench and then the big monster, kind of the battle of the riddles, if you will, with the monster to the point that he's finally able to get it. Yeah, did he get it? Yes, but only after going through these insanely crazy Herculean kind of trials. So I don't know that he just showed up and got it. I'm not too far off. I'm like more of a 3.5 out of 5. I don't give numerical scores anymore. But I'd say roughly speaking, I'd be around a 3.5 or a 7 out of 10. That's where I think this is a good solid movie, a good solid win. It's a good solid win. And you're right, the action was the action and the humor and the charisma of the Jason Momoa are ultimately the elements of this movie that to me float it to the top and make it work. Tennis Flado Mendoza writes, New 52 made Aquaman cool in the comics while Momoa made him cool on the big screen. Don't disagree. And you know what? Number one, you're absolutely right. The New 52 is what made Aquaman cool in the comics again. That was great. Also, Injustice Gods Among Us made Aquaman pretty damn cool. And I think Momoa has made him cool on the screen. And what I said coming out of the movie the first time was Jason Momoa's Aquaman is an amalgamation of the New 52 Aquaman and that late 80s, early 90s Aquaman when he went grunge with the long hair and the beard and his hand got cut off and he had the spike for a hand. That really WWE era, Attitude Era kind of Aquaman. I felt like Jason Momoa's Aquaman was a blend of those two Aquaman outlooks. And I thought it worked. I thought it worked really well. Razor's Edge Frisbee writes, since we're doing spoiler talk now, how good was that damn trench scene or sequence? Would I sound like a fanboy if I said it's my new all-time favorite scene in a comic book movie? First time since the first Avengers that my jaw dropped. It was, I thought it was a great scene. It was nightmarish. I think that's the word. If we're playing the game, what's the word? I would say the word to describe that whole thing was nightmarish. Because first, the trench creatures come right out of the New 52 comics, right? The design of them, so it looked great. And when they were battling on the boat, it felt intense. But it's when they dove into the water and you just see them swarming. It's like that's something out of a nightmare. It was nightmarish imagery. And I thought it was incredibly effective on that level. I thought it was really effective on that level. And all they could do was run. And run and run and run. The flare thing was a nice touch, too. Him realizing, hey, these are creatures of the deep. They're not used to bright light. Boom, 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 boom. That was a nice touch. It was a good idea. I'm not anywhere near you, Razor, thinking it's like one of my favorite scenes ever in a comic book movie, but I will say it was a really damn good sequence. And the nice thing about it, too, is that because it was so nightmarish, it added a different flavor to the movie from the more lighter fun fare throughout. Now you throw in a sequence like that, it just adds a little bit more variety to the movie, you know what I mean? So I thought that trench sequence worked on a number of levels. As an action sequence, as a great design, but also as a scene that just added a different dimension to the film that hadn't been there yet up until that point. And I thought the scene worked on a number of levels, Razor. I thought it worked on a number of levels. And I really dug it for sure. All right. Let's move on here. Angry Irish Benjamin writes, Octopus Drummer was hilarious and awesome. But I can't agree. And that's fine. We don't need to agree to be fellow film fans and enjoy our time together. We don't have to agree. Sometimes it's more fun when we don't. And on this one, Angry, I gotta disagree. It was not awesome to me, and it was not hilarious. It was cringy and made me want to close my eyes and go, oh God, tell me they didn't just do that. And then open my eyes to see them doing the ESPN scoreboard. I'm like, 1-2 punch. 1-2 punch, so bad. But hey, it worked for you, and I'm sure it worked for some other people as well. It just did not work for me. Cameron Peterson writes, rom-com bit when Mara first sees human world. Again, I think that's something that speaks a little bit to James Wan's need to develop in his director's toolkit that ability to make these emotional moments like really embracing and immersing herself in human surface culture for the first time and discovering these things. It should have been a sense of awe, and there should have been a sense of wonder to that if you wanted to do this, no pun intended, if you want to do this fish out of water thing. And again, it's just something that James Wan's not really adept at yet. He hasn't adapted to really knowing how to do those things. A lot of things he does very, very well. I think that's one of his weaknesses, and I agree, it kind of showed in that as well. I think it did show in that sequence as well. Let's see. ZCM Zombie Custom Apps writes, there was no reason for a Manta Montage. Well, I mean, no, there was a reason for it. I just don't think it should have been there at all. The reason was he got given a gun. If you just cut away and come back now and he's got this suit with the blaster eyes, wait, where the hell did he get that? Where the hell did he get that? So I would say the montage was necessary because if you're going to show him getting this gun, you have to give us at least an idea about, wait a minute, he didn't get given that helmet. He got given that gun. To give us a quick montage of him putting it together, I just wish they narratively said he got that gun 6 weeks ago and didn't show up 3 hours after getting the gun with this totally re-engineered piece of alien technology that he had never touched before. You know what I mean? So I get they needed that montage. I just think they should have done it in such a way that it's not saying, oh great, this new technology that the planet, it was even prototype for Atlanteans. Technology the world has never seen. He gets his hand on it, no problem. Give me a blowtorch and a screwdriver. I'll make a new weapon out of it in 3 hours. Yeah, Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that did not work for me. Patrick Conway writes, it was fun, not great. It lacked emotion. Did not need the long kiss in the middle of the battle. A little too long. Not as good as Bumblebee or Spider-Man. Oh, I agree. It's not. But then again, Spider-Verse to me is the best comic book movie of the year. And yeah, I understand that Black Panther, and I understand that Deadpool 2, and I understand that Avengers Infinity War all came out this year too. And I had to see the movie again. I've seen it 3 times now just to make sure. And yep, I'm sure. To me, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is the best comic book movie of the year. And it is crazy to say that because I had been so against this movie. I mean, not against it, but I hadn't exactly been a believer in this film. Yet it was. But that's not it. Just because saying it's not as good as Bumblebee or Spider-Man, that's not a detraction against Aquaman. I think, who cares? Those other ones were good on a certain level. This movie's good on a certain level too. The long kiss was ridiculously stupid. Not that I'm against them having their kiss. That's fine. But you were just talking about how too much time has passed. People are dying. Our people are dying. Every second that we waste, people are dying. Well then, this is a good time to let you suck my tongue. Blah, 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 right? It's like, really? And there's people dying. You're supposed to be becoming their king. You're supposed to be becoming their king. And you're just, you know what? If I sit here and suck on your tongue for about 15 seconds, probably about another 200 of my people will die. But that's a price worth paying to try to get my hand on your ass, right? That's how it came across. And it's stupid. It was ridiculous. It was totally misplaced in that movie. And I get it. Imagine the visual, them kissing with the camera panning and explosions going off anywhere. I get going for that visual, but that visual came at the expense of narrative. And all that scene made me think was, Aquaman is a dumbass. Aquaman's an idiot. There are people dying so he can try to cop a feel on Mera. There are people dying so he can suck on Mera's tongue for a couple of seconds. That was the price tag. And that pulled me out. That was a bad choice. From a filmmaking point of view, that was a bad choice. Because it just made me feel like Arthur was a selfish idiot. As people are dying, yeah, a few more people will die if you take the time to kiss this girl, but look at this girl. And granted, I mean, for those of us who are straight heterosexual males, we look at Amber Heard and go, there are a few mistakes I'd be willing to make to get that shot too. I get that, but you're supposed to be King Arthur. You're supposed to be king of the 7 seas. Your people are dying. Bugged me. Really bugged me. Anyway, let's move on here. Let's see. Michael Soleric writes, I liked Aquaman. It definitely played into the weirdness that is comic books, and I liked that. However, Black Manta felt like he was there for the admittedly awesome Italy fight. That was awesome. Well, hey, you know what? Sometimes characters are there. If you have this incredible, if part of your movie, as you're plotting out your movie, if you believe our story needs this big action beat here, bringing in your villain in there to serve the story in that way, to give you that set piece, to give you that moment, then yeah, use the characters to serve your movie, man. Use the characters to serve the movie. So I'm not going to disagree. I think there were 2 purposes for Black Manta. Number 1, just to introduce him into the world. Understand his seething hatred of Aquaman, and for that sequence in Italy. But I think those are good reasons to bring him in. I think those are good reasons. Because as you're charting out your film, it's like, in this part of the movie, we need a good action beat. So you need characters to fulfill the purpose of your movie. That's a good use of them. I think that's a very good use. So I agree. He was there primarily for 2 reasons. That action sequence, totally agree, but also just to get him introduced to the world and to make sure we all understood why he hates Aquaman so much. And by the way, let me point this out again. That one scene near the beginning when he stops him from taking that submarine, or at least he gets all the Russian sailors out. Having that scene where he could have saved Black Manta's father, but he chose not to. And I liked his line. You took innocent lives. Ask the sea for mercy. I like that line. I thought that was good. And I don't think that was inconsistent with Aquaman's character. But the the genius of that line and of that scene is it truly lets you understand why Manta would hate him so much and feel a righteousness in hating Aquaman. He blames Aquaman for the death of his father, and to a degree, he's correct. And it was really nice that later on in the film, Arthur acknowledged that. And I thought that worked on that level. I really did. I thought that was one of the stronger things that they did in the film. All right, let's see here. TNS93 writes, I'm not interested in any of the announced movies after Wonder Woman 1984 because they're not core Justice League members like CW level heroes. Well, but here's the thing, TNS. It is often those characters that will really surprise us. It is often those movies that will really surprise us. In the movie universe, your core Avengers members are Cap, Thor, Iron Man, Hulk, Widow, Hawkeye. There's your core Avengers team. And yet Ant-Man was so damn good. And Black Panther, who came along so late in the game, was so damn good. And Doctor Strange, which wasn't even a thought in those earlier films, so damn good. It is these movies that are the ones that can often come out of nowhere and just surprise the hell out of you. Just completely surprise out of you. Now look, I'm going to tell you what. This Birds of Prey movie, I don't have a lot of interest in it. I don't. But when that movie comes, I'm going to do what I always do. I have my expectations, but when it comes to watching the movie, I'm going to take my expectations and my preconceived notions and I'm going to leave them at the door, go in and watch the movie with a clean slate. That's what I did with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Totally blew my mind. Totally blew my mind. When I didn't really actually have all that many expectations or high hopes for that movie, totally blew my mind. And that's what I'll do with Birds of Prey. All I'm going to suggest to you, TNS, is that's fine. Right now, you're not really looking forward to them. That's cool. We all feel that way about certain movies. Just when the time comes and the movie comes, just make sure as you're walking into that theater, do a mental check. Stop at the door for a second and just envision yourself taking your expectations and leaving them at the door and go into that movie fresh and then see how it hits you. And maybe they'll work, maybe they won't work, but at least you'll know you gave the movie a fair shot at that point. All right. ZCM Zombie Custom Maps writes, I want to know more how Orem would attack Earth. Yeah, they never really did lay out their battle plans, right? Like, would it be a full surface invasion? Maybe. Would it just be flood them out? Maybe. You're right. That is one thing, ZCM, that you're kind of right on the money with that. They never really elaborated on what was Orem's plan. I don't know that it was necessarily important for us to know, but now that you mention it, yeah, I would have been curious to know that too. What was the idea? Slap a bunch of whales up on the surface, flood the major cities, send a full-blown, land attack with people from the Fisherman Kingdom and all that kind of stuff in military outfits to march on the land. Maybe. It would have been interesting to know. That would have been interesting to know. Ashley Hardman writes, James Wan loves slow-mo close-up shots too many. Well, he does. Actually, look, to be fair, though, Ashley, to be fair to James Wan ain't the only action director that loves his close-up slow-motion shots, right? A lot of good action kind of directors love their slow-mo action shots. And maybe to a fault sometimes. Does he overuse it a little bit in this movie? Maybe. I think you could make an argument for that. You could. It didn't bother me, though. I'll say that. So it didn't bother me. But yeah, you got a point. Yeah, there's no denying you got a point. All right. Razor's Edge Frisbee writes, that last fight with Arthur and Orem looked like it was ripped right out of the New 52 books. One of the few comic book movies, in my opinion, to handle comic book imagery that well. Yeah, but I will say this, though, Razor's Edge. I'll say this. It was also an example to me of, particularly with Ocean Master, they should have changed his look. Because his look was very true to the comic. Particularly once you put the mask on and everything, right? And it's one of those things where in the comic book pages it works. On the screen, to me, it felt kind of silly. Felt a little silly and ridiculous to me. And I actually kind of thought they should have done some adaptation there. I think they should have changed the look of him a little bit. I mean, kept the premise of him so we can clearly see the influence of the New 52 Ocean Master, but make it more palatable for the screen, because I felt like his look was a little too cartoony for me. Just a little bit too cartoony for me. Because, like, even when Aquaman comes out in the quote-unquote traditional Aquaman look, that was adapted. That didn't look like spandex orange. That looked like an adaptation of what in this world that would look like. And I kind of wish they had done that with Orem as well. I do wish it was with Orem as well. But I dug the fight. I like the fight. I like the action and all that kind of stuff. Again, not all that big on the ending of it when the mom comes out of the water because she had to take time to go and powder her nose and put on a new fresh set of clothes. The emotion of the reunion didn't quite work for me, blah, blah, but the action of the scene, that worked for me. It was a good fight. I thought both the fights between Aquaman and Orem, one above water, one underwater, and I thought they both worked really well. And I thought it was a cool thing that the callback when Aquaman pulls out the move that Volko was showing him earlier in the film, right? So I kind of dug that. It worked for me. I liked it. Good action sequence for sure. But again, I just wish they changed Orem's design a little bit. That's just me, though. ZCM writes, that wine scene with Mara, wow, completely agree. That's why I mentioned that one a little bit earlier. I thought that was a great way to end that thing. It's like, okay, you caught her off guard. You're outnumbering her. You're chasing her. But at some point, Mara's going to go, I've had enough of this. And she's going to get to a spot with some liquid. And then she's going to fuck you up. And she did it so emphatically and with such an exclamation mark on it, I totally dug it. I really like the way that whole thing ended. Luna Comics writes, fun fact, the drum octopus is named Tobo, and he's from the comics. I do not recall Tobo. It does put, look, if he is a character from the comics, and that's not a stretch, then I could see it as an interest. I still think having an octopus playing the drums was a little too much. I still think that's a little too much. And again, it's fine. It lasted like 2 seconds. It's not a big deal. It's just something I wish they had cut out. But if that's true, and that's supposed to be Tobo from the comics, okay, they wanted to slap him in there. Still don't think you should have an octopus playing the drums, though. But that's just me, Luna. That's just me. All right. Let's see. ZCM writes, Mara riding away on a killer whale made me giggle. Yeah. But again, I thought pretty cool. That one worked for me. Let's see. Casey Thurman writes, favorite fight of the movie. There are some good fights in here. There are some good fights. But, straight up, I actually think that one we talked about a little bit earlier, the Nicole Kidman one right off the top. In that close quarter when the Atlanteans come to take her for that first time, that's a pretty great shot. That's a great scene. And that's not disparaging any of the other fights in the movie. Not at all. But that was pretty special. I like that one a lot. So I'm going to say that one for now. Paul M. writes, I'm glad they were able to find a way to use green and gold suits. Some of the CGI was wonky, mostly moving in water, but it never overdid it. Yeah, again, number one, I like that they adapted the classic look for the movie screen, right? That's what you need to do. You need to adapt. So I was fine with that. A lot of the CGI was wonky. And honestly, and this is just my opinion, my perspective, I think some people mistake the sheer amount of visual effects with great visual effects. And I think there are some people who confuse great art direction with great visual effects. The art direction's wonderful in the movie. And I'll tell you straight up, I'm not going to be shocked or surprised if Aquaman does get like a best art direction kind of nomination. I won't be surprised about that at all. But yeah, an awful lot of the CGI was marginal in its quality. It was marginal in its quality. I mean, compared to movies 7 years ago, yeah, it's great. But by modern standards, a lot of it, to me, was underwhelming. It worked, and it's fine. And I suspended my disbelief and I just got into it for what it was. And that's great. That's what we as an audience have to do sometimes. But yeah, I just didn't think the actual execution of the visual effects was all that great. It's just my opinion, I suppose. Let's see. Will Aquaman repeat the Venom success? I don't know. See, personally, I don't think this movie gets to $800 million. But, as I've said a number of times already, don't forget, I also said I didn't think Venom would get to $800 million. And Venom well cleared $800 million. It ended up, I think the final number on Venom was $854 million. And I never thought Venom would get to $800 million. So here we are. I don't think Aquaman will get to $800 million, but I've said that before and it did. I think it would be wonderful if it does, because I think it's wonderful that Venom did it. And I think it was well-deserved that Venom got that success. I hope Aquaman gets that kind of success. Again, I have my doubts, but I had them about Venom too, and look what happened. So it's certainly possible. I hope it does. Let's just say that, Nuno. I hope it does. I hope it does. All right. Let's see. Helen Maras writes, watched Spider-Verse and Aquaman back-to-back yesterday. I enjoyed Aquaman a lot more. Not a better film, but more fun for me, probably because of the huge hype of Spider-Man. I mean, hey, that's the subjectivity of film. For me, they're not even close. I'll just be honest with you. To me, the disparity between Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which I don't just think is one of the best comic book movie of the year, I think it's one of the best movies of the year, period, and stop. So I think, Bumblebee, Aquaman, right? Bumblebee, Aquaman. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, like way over. I think it doesn't just beat it. I think it trounces it. But I think it trounces. I loved Ant-Man and the Wasp, but I think Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse trounces Ant-Man and the Wasp. I was just so overly impressed with that movie. It's absolutely crazy. But film is subjective. That's the beautiful thing about movies, man, is each one of us can watch a piece of art and it will impress upon us all in different ways. I bring up this illustration a lot, but it's totally true. You talk to people who run art museums. They say you can have 20 people standing around the same piece of art that's hanging on the wall, and each of them see 20 different things. Even though they're looking at the same piece of art, they're seeing 20 different things. That's what I love about the subjectivity of film, is that we can all watch these movies and we all have our very unique individual experience with them, because each film hits each one of us in a very unique and different way. And that'll mean sometimes a lot of us will like one and a lot of us will dislike another. Sometimes people like you and me will prefer one over the other and sometimes not. And that's not something to be afraid of. That's not something to fight over. That's something to celebrate about the movies, and why I always do, and why I think the best thing. See, the subjectivity of film is not just something you have to understand and accept. To me, the subjectivity of film is the best part of film. It is the best part of movies, and for reasons like this, that's exactly why I feel it. So you watched Aquaman and had a better time with it. That's awesome. I watched Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse and had a better time with it. That's awesome. And we get to share our love of these movies together, and that's why I love being a film fan. So thanks for bringing that up, man. All right, let's see here. Matthias Peterson writes, saw Aquaman last night, really had a great time. Merry Christmas, mate. Well, thank you so much, and a Merry Christmas to you and everybody out there. I'm heading back to Canada to go be with family and friends over the holidays. This is the last video that I'm doing before I fly out to Canada. And by the way, guys, I'm going to be doing open mics. I know all of us just want to talk movies while we're gone, so I'm going to do open mics and some special year-end videos from Canada, including my top 10 of the year, my bottom 10 of the year, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to be doing those when I'm out in Canada. Look, the bottom line, I was just so happy the first time I saw Aquaman, Matthias, that I was able to come out of the movie with a smile on my face and going, that was fun. There are lots of movies that try to be fun and they fail. Aquaman tried to be fun. In my opinion, it succeeded. And I walked out of that going, yeah, that was good. I had a good time with that. And it felt so good to do that. Lyle Navin writes, Arthur not knowing Pinocchio was a book seems Homerish. Here's the thing, though. To me, it was an interesting dichotomy. I thought it was actually kind of interesting. When he goes, that was a book. I think there are a lot of people who don't realize Pinocchio was a book. I don't think that's some weird thing. It's not like saying you didn't know Lord of the Rings was a book. I think there are a lot of people that don't know Pinocchio was a book. And even then, I still thought it was a nice juxtaposition, because here you had Aquaman, who knows all this Greek history and Roman history and mythology of the Caesars, and he knows all this stuff. And Pinocchio was a book, and he didn't. I think that was kind of great. I didn't think it made him feel Homerish at all. I think it just made him feel like a multi-dimensional character. He knows all this stuff about Roman history, but he didn't know Pinocchio was a book. I liked it. And again, I would have had an issue with it if, like, everybody knew Pinocchio's book. I think there's a hell of a lot of people who don't know that Pinocchio's a book. I think there's a lot of people who just think Pinocchio is the movie Pinocchio. So I personally, Lyle, didn't find that to be Homerish. And I thought it was a nice juxtaposition against he knows so much about one thing, not so much about something else. Worked for me. But obviously it didn't click with you, and that's cool. But yeah, it did kind of work for me. All right. Recruz writes, can we all take a moment to admire that soundtrack? Well, I don't know that there's a lot to admire about the sound. I certainly didn't mind the soundtrack. Unless you're being facetious, and you might be being facetious here. I didn't mind the soundtrack other than the Pitbull tune. The Pitbull tune took me out a bit. Yeah, it did. But, hey, whatever. Santez Henderson writes, the humor and dialogue just killed the film for me. Also, I complain a lot about romance and comic book movies, but the Marin Arthur romance was bad. See, I'm going to disagree with you on all levels there. I thought the humor worked. The dialogue in service of the humor worked, but sometimes there were scenes where the dialogue did not function very well. That I agree with. But I thought it worked well in its humor. And the humor, I think, is the main selling feature. The humor and the action are the main selling pieces of this movie, and I think the main reasons why the majority of people are enjoying this movie and liking it. I'm a little torn on the romance because I did buy the chemistry, the natural on-screen chemistry between Amber Heard and Jason Momoa, I thought was legit and I thought worked. The problem was they didn't execute that natural chemistry they had. They didn't take advantage of it, and they didn't do the build-up to it very well. And again, I've already mentioned it a couple times, Santez. I think that's just kind of indicative of some of the things James Wan, amongst all the things that James Wan is great at as a director. I think that kind of highlights, it's the emotional stuff he doesn't quite have a sensitivity to and know how to make them play out in an emotionally real kind of way. So I felt the spark between them, but I never felt the development of it. So when they finally touch hands and they look at each other longingly, it was like, it felt empty. It felt a little empty. I mean, they had been trying to build up to that, and I get it, but it just wasn't handled great. So anyway, that's just the way I saw it at any rate. All right. Where are we at now? Well, Jesus, this is the second jump. Okay. Guys, I'm going to ask you right now, because we're already well over an hour into this thing, and we still got a bunch more questions to go. No more, please don't send in any more questions or chats. No more questions or chats. I've got, still got a bunch here we got to get to, so I want to make sure we get to them all. So please, no more questions or chats. I'm going to get through the ones that we got here. Let's see. Captain Mexico 21 writes, Aquaman and Kaiju scene reminded me of Detective Pikachu. Really? I don't know. I mean, I see what you're saying, but to me, they felt nowhere near similar. I mean, yes, one was, wait, you can understand me? Okay, yeah, there's both that, but there was nothing to remind me of. The context and the tone were so totally and completely different. I mean, so yeah, on its surface, it doesn't just remind you of it. It is the same thing. A creature saying to another creature, oh, wait, you can actually understand me. Yeah, on the surface, but there was nothing about those two scenes that remind me of each other, you know what I mean? But hey, that's just me. By the way, I'm looking forward to that Pikachu movie. And I was not until I saw the trailer, and now I'm looking forward to it. Captain Marvelous writes, when the Kraken pulled the "you can understand me" line, did anyone else think Detective... Well, there you go. Great minds, Captain Marvelous, Captain Mexico, one right after the other. Great minds, folks, great minds. All right. Michael Soleric writes, thought it's funny Atlantis is considered a crazy theory in a world where Zod and Steppenwolf tried to invade the world. Superman is A-OK. Aquaman and Atlantis, you're crazy for bringing that up. Okay, yes, but Michael, in the film's defense, Superman wasn't a myth, right? Superman wasn't a myth. It's something the world witnessed and something the world saw. It's not like he was... And by the way, it was also not like Superman is a myth that went back for decades and decades and decades, and all of a sudden he just showed up. No. Nobody had ever considered or thought of a Superman, and then just one day, boom, he appears, and the world witnessed. Atlantis is a mythology that goes back centuries, right? And never seen and never witnessed, right? So it's like Santa Claus. Just because Superman is in the world does not now make the world go, well, maybe Santa Claus is real. It doesn't make you do that. So, I mean, I see where you're coming from there. I do. But I think the fundamental differences between the circumstances of Superman's arrival and the circumstance of Atlantis. Atlantis has been a mythology for centuries amongst mankind, and it was never witnessed and all that kind of stuff. I don't think the appearance of a Superman makes everybody suddenly reevaluate or revisit the notion of, well, maybe Atlantis is real. Like, I don't think that's the case. Once Atlantis makes itself known, then yeah, the world should be able to deal with it a little bit better now, because we are living in a world with Superman and aliens and a Greek goddess, Wonder Woman, and all that kind of stuff. Now the world lives in a reality where these things exist. So once Atlantis becomes a witnessed thing, the world should be able to deal with it. But I don't think the appearance of Superman and the other heroes and aliens makes people just automatically rethink Atlantis any more than it made us automatically rethink Santa Claus. So that's just kind of the way I see it. But yeah, I do see where you're going with that. Carrie Neves writes, octopus playing drums, Little Mermaid reference. Was that a little... I don't even remember that. I don't even remember. Is that what it was? Was that a Little Mermaid reference? I don't even remember it. Because somebody brought up a little bit earlier, for those of you joining us a little bit late, somebody brought up a little bit earlier that they love the Little Mermaid references. And I'm like, I saw Little Mermaid like once decades ago. I don't recall seeing any Little Mermaid references. And Kari is nice enough to point that out. I didn't realize that. I see, learn something new every day doing this stuff, guys. Rick Cruz writes, you have to say, on one hand, you kind of feel bad for Manta, but on the other hand, he's still kind of a jackass. Worked well for me. Look, Manta is nowhere near as good of a character as Thanos. I'm not trying to say he is, but let me do a little bit of a comparison with Thanos and Manta. Yeah, with Manta, you get his anger. Aquaman was a bit of a dick, but the character is a bit of a dick, right? Aquaman was a bit of a dick. Say, look, my dad's going to die here and drowned. All you need to do is come over here and lift this up. And he's like, you killed innocent people. Let the sea ask the sea for mercy. It was a great line, by the way. But in his eyes, in Manta's eyes, Aquaman is a straight up murderer. Whether his perception is right or wrong, that's a different question. But in Manta's eyes, Aquaman is a straight up murderer who murdered his father. And you can get that. But at the same mistake, make no mistake about it, he is evil. Manta is evil. And I draw that comparison with Thanos because, hey, you can sort of see where Thanos is coming from. I want to bring balance to the universe. I want to solve problems for people. And he sees himself in that way. But make no mistake about it, Thanos is evil. Thanos has done a lot to be straight up evil. And they are alike in that way. And again, I am not suggesting that Manta is anywhere near the character that Thanos is, but I just thought that was an interesting kind of comparison because you're right. You can kind of see where it's coming from, but it does not negate the fact that he is evil. He is a bad person. And I kind of dug that they did that a little bit. All right. Colin C. writes, overall, I enjoyed Aquaman, embraced the flaws and plot holes. The visuals were incredible. The reunion between Arthur and Atlanta, I think it was Atlanta. Anyway, I'm not quite sure of the proper spelling of her name. It was a tearjerker for me. While I was not a big fan of the reunion between Atlanta and Orem was very good. I do think the reunion between, although I'm not quite sure why she recognized her son. She hadn't seen him since he was a baby. And she just stood there. Now, I understand why Arthur recognized her because they had the family portrait. They had the family picture. So I understand why Aquaman recognized his mother. I wasn't quite sure why she recognized her son so quickly. Unless it's an Atlantis superpower thing. But I didn't understand that. But yes, I agree with you. I thought that scene worked well. It's probably the one kind of emotional scene in the movie that I thought James Wan handled pretty good. Wasn't able to follow through when she met her other son, but I think it did work in that scene. Let's see. Winter Naomi Vera writes, apparently the Legion of Doom was part of Whedon's reshoots, which aren't canon, since Momoa confirmed Aquaman picks up where Snyder's Justice League left off. They are canon. They're in the movie. It is therefore canon. I mean, that Justice... I did not like that. I'm not a big fan of the way they did that Legion of Doom post-credit scene. But it is canon. It's on the screen. It's whether Warner Brothers wants to acknowledge it. It is canon. Whether that was ever going to be a part of James Wan's plans with Aquaman, it's kind of irrelevant at that point. It doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is he never planned on having a Legion of Doom post-credit scene, so he didn't want to do that. It's fine. But that doesn't change the fact that it's in the movie. It's canon. I mean, that's just the way it is. We can like it, or like me, we cannot like it, but it is what it is. So, and again, I am in agreement with it. I'm just glad they didn't do it. I don't think it would have been smart. I think it would have undone some of the good work they did in the movie, and I'm really happy that they didn't do it. So that's just kind of my opinion on this. So thanks for sharing that, Winter. All right. Charlie Rogers writes, longtime fan. Thank you so much, Charlie. Why does the octopus playing the drums bother so many people, but the talking crabs at the end didn't? Well, because they are presented as two different things. They're not talking crabs. It is a race of Atlantean that has evolved in a different way, and they're presented to us as a race of Atlanteans. The octopus is just an octopus playing the drums, which, yeah, doesn't work. And again, I don't want to overemphasize it. It lasts for like 2 seconds. It's no big deal. But it did play, and I'm like, yeah, no, that doesn't work. But you introduce us to the Kingdom of the Fishermen. It works. They are a race of Atlanteans that evolved in different ways, much like the Trench are a race of Atlanteans that evolved in a different way. And then you get to the crustaceans, and it's like they evolved in a different way as well. So they present it to us in that line of their mythology. So that doesn't bother us. But yes, an octopus that is an octopus playing the drums seems a little wacky. And it seems out of place. Had they introduced that there is one of the tribes of Atlantis evolved into more octopus-like creatures, and they had a love of music, if they had introduced that into the movie, then probably the octopus playing the drums is not a big deal. But they didn't do that. It was an octopus playing the drums. And to some people, that's hilarious. To some people like me, it kind of bothered us, but it didn't bother me a great deal. I mean, it's the last 2 seconds of the movie. Who cares? And then we moved on from it. Let's see. Charlie follows up with, from what I've read, the octopus was a reference to his pet in the comics. Yeah, that was brought up a little bit earlier as well. I like the movie more with each viewing. I've seen it 3 times so far. I have had the opportunity to see it twice so far. I even had more fun with it the second time. I had more fun with it the second time that I saw it. So to me, it's a fun movie. And that's why, look, do I think it's a perfect movie? No. Do I think it's a great movie? No, I don't think it's a great movie, but I think it's a win. I think this movie is a win, and that's what Warner Brothers needed with DC. They needed a win. And I think this movie's a winner. I think it's entertaining. It's fun. Does it have its problems? Yes. Does it have some things I wish they didn't? Yes. Do they mishandle some of the emotional things? Yes. Are there a couple of cringy parts? Yes. All that is true. That's why I don't think it's a great movie. But I think it's a real good one. And an entertaining one. And I think that one that most people are going to enjoy if they go out to check it out. Charlie follows that up with, and I love the final battle between Arthur and Orem. It was a good fight, man. It was a good fight. And I've already kind of referenced that. And again, I just didn't really love the way it ended with the mom coming up. And that kind of undid it a bit for me. But the battle itself was great. and you felt the emotion in the fight itself, in the action. I mean, James Wan's great at showing the emotion in the action. That's great. So yeah, I love that scene too. I thought that was really good. All right, Captain Obvious writes, the epic music in the final Aquaman trailer made me excited for the movie, but it isn't in the movie once, not even the credits. That's not unusual. There is a lot of trailers that play music that aren't in the movie because, you know, you're making a trailer, not the movie. One of the great examples of that is one of the Lord of the Rings Return of the King trailers features, what was the name? The something Requiem. Why am I forgetting the name of it? I got to look it up. Let's see. Who is in that movie? Let me just bring this up quick because I'm sorry for stalling here, guys, but this is going to kill me if I don't look this up and see what the name of this movie is. No, it was before that. King Dream, Miami Vice. It was before Collateral. Guys, this is so bad of me to be doing this. What's the name of the movie? Anyway, I can't find the name of the movie now. I'm sorry, guys. I'm freezing on this, but it's that drug movie about the drug addiction. And anyway, it's got this piece of music in it called the something Requiem, and then they play that music. It's that classic music. Ba 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 bum bum ba 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 bum bum. Oh, maybe I'm looking at Jamie Foxx. Marion Wayans. Is that the guy who was in it? Anyway, it was this epic, big, huge, iconic music that several movies have used for their trailers, including Lord of the Rings did. And yes, so some people are saying, was it Requiem for a Dream? Is that the one that it was? Hold on a second, let me find out. It was Requiem for a Dream. Okay, so the piece of music from it was called Requiem something, or something Requiem was the name of the music. And it's just like stellar, iconic, epic kind of music that they've then used in many, many different kind of for trailers, including Lord of the Rings. And then I watched Lord of the Rings, like, that music wasn't in it. Then I realized it was from Requiem for a Dream. So anyway, yeah, that happens. Nothing to be really shocked about, but it does happen. Let's see. Recruz writes, the important thing is the character has now become interesting to the general audience so all they can do now is go from strength to strength. This is what DC needed. I completely agree, Recruz. Completely agree. They needed a win. They needed to change the narrative. They've now given now you've got a character that is going to be thought of in positive terms instead of negative ones in Aquaman. And now hopefully you can parlay that and move into Shazam and build a win after a win. That's called a winning streak. One of the great NFL coaches. Guys, that's two. You know what we win today? You know what that's called? A winning streak. DC needs a winning streak. To get that, they needed to win one. They did that with Aquaman. Now they got to make it two in a row. Can they? I think they will. I don't know that Shazam's going to be any good. Maybe they'll suck ass. Who knows? But I think it looks good. I think they're on the right track. I think Walter Hamada's got them going in a good direction. And you're right, Recruz. At the end of the day, this is what they needed. They needed this. All right. Enrique305 just sends in a super chat. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. ZCM Zombie writes, let's see. Okay. The Skylar Grey song for the movie is beautiful. I don't know the song off the top of my head, so I can't. But all of you can discuss that amongst yourselves, because I don't know which one that is off the top of my head, to be honest with you. I'm Upset writes, more likely Aquaman 2, Flash, or Black Adam. Aquaman 2. Easy. I'm not convinced at all that Flash is ever even happening. I think there's a very real possibility Flash doesn't happen. I don't know that. It's been delayed and pushed back, and 4 sets of writers, 3 sets of directors, blah, 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 blah. Delay. I am doubting that this movie's ever even going to happen. I'm not saying it won't. I'm just saying I'm having my doubts. I have no doubt they're going to do an Aquaman 2. Whereas I believe some doubt exists about Flash and some doubt exists about Black Adam. RA's Reviews writes, the selfie scene was awesome. The movie has questionable music choices. It's funny how I cannot remember the last time we talked about a comic book movie where so many comments about the music have come out, whether it's the score, trailer music, Pitbull's song, other things like that. Hey, look, I will say this. I do believe there are some questionable things in there. Some questionable choices. But never to the point that it pulled me out of the movie. So I'll at least give it that. And I thought the score itself was perfectly fine. The score was good. Soundtrack choices, some of them maybe not so strong. Some of them maybe a little bit weak, a little bit questionable. I will be in agreement with you on that, RA. I will be in agreement with you on that. Let's see here. J. Hart RIC writes, loved Aquaman. It should sweep the technical awards, in my opinion. It was also my first time seeing a film in 4DX. I mean, look, I quite enjoyed Aquaman. Technical awards, no. I think now, coming from a visual effects background, I worked in visual effects for a number of years. I don't see it winning a lot of technical awards. I didn't think the sound design was all that fantastic. I didn't think the sound mix was all that great. I don't see it winning. I mean, obviously it's not getting nominated for best visual effects, so there's that as well. Yeah, I honestly don't see it winning a lot of technical awards. I don't. It might get one or two nominations. Clearly not getting a visual effects nomination. We already know that. But I don't see it getting a lot of technical awards. But a fun, over-the-top, crazy kind of comic book movie that I think a lot of people are going to enjoy, man. Jay Hart follows it up with, the runtime / pacing felt long, but I don't see much to cut. Maybe trim, rework Manta's part, and maybe trim the desert section, but not much else in my opinion. You know what? I was actually okay with it. Hold on, let me look this up here. It was a little over 2 hours. Aquaman's official runtime, 2 hours and 22 minutes. It's long. I'm going to be honest with you, Jay. It never felt long to me. I felt like the cadence of this movie moved in such a way that the length worked. I didn't think there was a lot of extraneous stuff in it that didn't need to be there, other than the 2 seconds of an octopus playing drums, but that's nothing, right? For the most part, I felt like this movie kept moving at a very good pace. And I never felt like it was dragging out at any point. I felt like it had a cadence, it moved, it had a definite pace to it. And so I never felt like it was overly long. I was perfectly fine with the runtime. There are other movies at 2 hours and 20 minutes is far too long. But I felt the way this one was paced, it worked just fine. To me, it worked fine. Let's see. The last couple of questions here, guys. Zombie Custom Mats writes, Aquaman 2, Dominic Toretto and Arthur Curry in Miami, partying up, and a soundtrack completely done by Pitbull, who is, of course, also from Miami. Charlie Rogers writes, that line Arthur gives Orem at the end, then by bloodshed, let the gods' will be known, or make known their will, or whatever it is. Remember, that's also the line that Orem gives him in their first fight. And by bloodshed, let the gods make their will known, or let the gods, by that we will know the gods' will, whatever the line was exactly. It's the same line Orem gives in the first fight, and then a really nice little combat, kind of a screw you by Arthur, when Arthur repeats the same line that he said earlier in the movie there. It was great use of it. I like the line. It worked a lot for me. Mike Hill writes, did you see Aquaman's mom being alive coming? I'll be honest with you, no. No. As soon as Mara got rescued, I'm like, oh, that's probably Aquaman's mom. But before that happened, no, I thought they just wrote her out of the movie at that point. I thought Nicole Kidman showed up for that first couple scenes and then she's gone. But as soon as Mara got rescued, it's like, oh, that's probably Aquaman's mom. That's when I clued in. But I'll be honest with you, I didn't see it coming before then, though. I really didn't. Some people will lie and say, oh, yeah, I saw it coming. No, I'll be honest with you. I didn't see it coming until Mara got rescued. Final question of the day, and it's good because my voice is just about gone, guys. Tennis Vlado Mendoza writes, when do you head out for Canada? Safe travels tonight. I'm actually getting on a flight tonight. Me and Ann are going to take a overnight flight into Toronto, and that's when we're going. So Yay! And I will do videos from Canada probably the day after Christmas. Probably Boxing Day, which is the 26th. I will probably do an open mic. Probably no videos tomorrow or Christmas Day. I'm going to probably take a little bit of a break. And do some stuff then. But yeah. All right, guys. That will do it for this open spoiler discussion of Aquaman. Again, a film that I think is a win for the DC Universe. Had a good time with it, and I hope that if you're somebody who watches the spoiler thing and haven't seen the movie yet, get it out and see it. I think you're going to have a good time with it. Listen, guys, this is my final video before Christmas. Going to take a couple of days off, something I have not done in a long time. I hope you guys, listen, Christmas is my favorite season of the year. It's my favorite day of the year, even more than the Oscars. Christmas is my favorite day of the year for a lot of different reasons, and I won't go into those. But I wholeheartedly, you have no idea how much of a sense of gratitude I have for you guys who would here on a Sunday afternoon want to jump online with me and everybody else and just talk Aquaman. You know, to me, that is just amazing. And I hope all of you have an amazing holiday season here, that you get to spend it celebrating whichever way you like to celebrate it, whether you just need some time alone to recharge your batteries or time with family and friends to celebrate, whatever it is that you need, I hope you get it, and you get it in spades this holiday season, guys. And know that this one Canadian kid here is going to be going into Christmas incredibly grateful for all of you that you let me be a part of this community the way that you have. So get it out and see Aquaman again. I think I might even I don't have a Star Wars movie to take my mom to this year. Maybe I'll take her to see Aquaman. Well, I don't know. We'll have to see. Thank you guys for joining me here. That'll do it for me. Have a great Christmas Eve and a great Christmas. My name's John Campia. And until Boxing Day, bye-bye.